श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम। सर्वमंगल मांगल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थ साधिके शरण्ये त्र्यंबके देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। प्रथमो हनुमन्नाम द्वितीयो भीम एव च पूर्णप्रज्ञस्तृतीयस्तु भगवत्कार्यसाधकः। ಮಾಂತರಿಗಳ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ, ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಈ ವಿಶೇಷವಾದ ವಿಜಯದಶಮಿ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ವಿಶೇಷ ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗೆ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ದೀಪಕ್ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮೊಂದಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮಾತನಾಡಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅದರ ಮುಂಚೆ ನಾವೀಗ ಹರಿವಾಯು ಗುರು ಹಿರಿಯರ ಆಶೀರ್ವಾದದೊಂದಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭ ಮಾಡೋಣ. ಮೊದಲಿಗೆ ಶ್ರೀಮತಿ ಶುಭಾ ಅವರು ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆ ಮಾಡಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಶುಭಾ ಅವರೇ.
ಮಾಂತರಿಗಳ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಇವತ್ತು ಅಣುವಾಯು ಸ್ತುತಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ, ಇದು ಕಲ್ಯಾಣಿ ದೇವಿಯವರ ರಚನೆ. ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನಾನನಾನನಾನನಾನನಂ ಚಂದ್ರವಿಭೂಷಣ ಚಂದ್ರಪುರೋಗೈರ್ವಂದ್ಯಪದಾಂಬುರು ಹಂಪವಮಾನಂ ವಂದ್ಯಪದಾಂಬುರುಹಂ ಪವಮಾನಂ ಆನಂದತೀರ್ಥ ಮಹಾಮುನಿರಾಜಂ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಭಕ್ತ ಶಿಖಾಮಣಿ ಮೀಡೆ ಆನಂದತೀರ್ಥ ಮಹಾಮುನಿರಾಜಂ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಭಕ್ತ ಶಿಖಾಮಣಿ ಮೀಡೆ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನಾನನಾನನಾನನಾನನಂ ಪ್ರಾಣಗಣಾಧಿಪತಿಂ ಭುವಿ ವಾಣಿ ಪ್ರಾಣಸಮಂ ದಯಯಾಖ್ಯವತೀರ್ಣಂ ಪ್ರಾಣಸಮಂ ದಯಯಾಖ್ಯವತೀರ್ಣಂ ಆನಂದತೀರ್ಥ ಮಹಾಮುನಿರಾಜಂ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಭಕ್ತ ಶಿಖಾಮಣಿ ಮೀಡೆ ಆನಂದತೀರ್ಥ ಮಹಾಮುನಿರಾಜಂ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಭಕ್ತ ಶಿಖಾಮಣಿ ಮೀಡೆ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನಾನನಾನನಾನನಾನನಂ ಶ್ರೀ ಹನುಮಂತ ಮನಂತ ಭುಜೇಶ್ಯಂ ಲಂಘಿತ ಸಿಂಧು ಮುದಸ್ತ ಮಹೀಥಂ ಲಂಘಿತ ಸಿಂಧು ಮುದಸ್ತ ಮಹೀಧ್ರಂ ಲಂಘಿತ ಸಿಂಧು ಮುದಸ್ತ ಮಹೀಥಂ ಲಂಘಿತ ಸಿಂಧು ಮುದಸ್ತ ಮಹೀಧ್ರಂ ಲಂಘಿತ ಸಿಂಧು ಮುದಸ್ತ ಮಹೀಧ್ರಂ ಆನಂದತೀರ್ಥ ಮಹಾಮುನಿರಾಜಂ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಭಕ್ತ ಶಿಖಾಮಣಿ ಮೀಡೆ ಆನಂದತೀರ್ಥ ಮಹಾಮುನಿರಾಜಂ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಭಕ್ತ ಶಿಖಾಮಣಿ ಮೀಡೆ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನಾನನಾನನಾನನಂ ಭೀಷಣ ದುಷ್ಟ ಕುಲಾಂತಕ ಭೀಮಂ ಭೀಮಮಭೀತಿ ದಮೇಷ್ಟ ಜನಾನಾಂ 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 ಆನಂದತೀರ್ಥ ಮಹಾಮುನಿರಾಜಂ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಭಕ್ತ ಶಿಖಾಮಣಿ ಮೀಡೆ ಆನಂದತೀರ್ಥ ಮಹಾಮುನಿರಾಜಂ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಭಕ್ತ ಶಿಖಾಮಣಿ ಮೀಡೆ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ ತನನಂ ನಂ ತಾನನ tananam nam tanananananananananam shantamanam tani shantasamase शान्तकुले खकुले किल जातं 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 आनन्दतीर्थमहामुनिराजं गोविन्दभक्तशिखामणिमीडे आनन्दतीर्थमहामुनिराजं गोविन्दभक्तशिखामणिमीडे तननं नं तानना तननं नं तानना तननं नं तानना. Thank you.
ತುಂಬಾ ಸೊಗಸಾಗಿ ಹಾಡಿದ್ರಿ ಶುಭ ಅವರೇ, ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಶುಭ ಅವರು ಹಾಡುವಾಗ ಸುಮಾರು ಜನ ಸೇರಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಇನ್ನೊಮ್ಮೆ ವಿಜಯದಶಮಿ ಹಾಗೂ ಮಧ್ವ ಜಯಂತಿಯ ಹಾರ್ದಿಕ ಶುಭಾಶಯಗಳು ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಂದ. ಈಗ ಮುಂದೆ ಶ್ರೀವತ್ಸ ಬಳ್ಳಾಳ ಅವರು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಅವರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತನಾಡಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಶ್ರೀವತ್ಸ ಅವರೇ.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಶರಣ್. ಶುಭಕ್ಕ ಮಧ್ವ ಜಯಂತಿದೋ ದಿನ ಒಂಜಿ ಅಪರೂಪಂತ ಕೃತಿನ ನಿಂಕ್ಲು ಪದ ಪಂಡರ್ ಮಧ್ವಾಚಾರ್ಯರನ್ನು ತತ್ವನ ಎಂಕ್ಲಿಗೆ ಮಂತ ಬೋಧನೆ ಅಂತದ ಐತ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಎಂಕ್ಲಿಗೆ ಅರಿವು ಕೊಳ್ಪೋನ ಬನ್ನಂಜೆ ಗುರುಕುಲ್ನ ಪದನ ಕೇಂತ ಮಸ್ತ್ ಸಂತೋಷಾನ ಮಂತೆರೆಗ್ಲ in Tulu to Paterpe. Deepak ji, with your permission, I'm going to introduce you in Tulu.
Sounds good.
I know that you probably won't follow, but let me take this privilege to Tulu.
Chur Tulu Batana.
Aat Batana Papa. So, must time la getom preen, Jek Panda, ini Enkola Nadu to Deepak Sharma ಉಳ್ಳೇರ ಏನ ಆಕ್ಲೇನ ಎಂಕಲ್ನ ಕುಟುಂಬಂತೋ ಈವೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತ ಅಂಪೆ ಆಯ್ತು. ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಆಕಲ್ನ ಅಪ್ಪ ಎಲ್ಲ ರಘುಪತಿ ಶರ್ಮಲ ಸೇರು ಅಂತೀರು ನಿಂಕ್ಲೆಗ್ಲ ಎಂಕಲ್ನ ಕುಟುಂಬಂತೋ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ಗೆ ಎಂಕಲ್ ಸ್ವಾಗತ ಕೋರಂತುಳ್ಳು ಬೆತ್ ಮೂಳಿ ಇಪ್ಪುಣ ಆಕ್ಲೆಗ್ ಮಂತ ಏನ ಅಪ್ಪನಗನೆ ಒಂಜಿ ಇಲಾಬರೇಟ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಕಡಬಿಡ್ತೆ ದೀಪಕ್ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಏರು ಆಕಳ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಗ್ರೌಂಡ್ ಮಂತ. ಸೊ ಏನ್ ಆಯ್ತ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂಚೂರು ಪಾತಿರ್ಪೆ ಅಮೆರಿಕಂಟೆ ಪುಟ್ಟತ್ ಬೊಳೆತ್ನೋ ನಮ್ಮ ಶಿವಳ್ಳಿ ಮೂಲಂತೂ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ದೀಪಕ್ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಆಕಳು ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಎಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಬೆತ್ ಮ್ಯಾಥಮೆಟಿಕ್ಸ್ ಶುರು ಅಂತಂದಲ್ಲ ಹಾಫ್ ವೇ ಥ್ರೂ ಆಕಳು he decided to pursue religious studies and he took a transfer to Reed College in Oregon. So avulu yoga anta pantarata anchane aklige aklo onji professor Edwin Jerov pantu aklo bheti aat a bheti do onji mahatvat avara aklige beta religious studies and follow antat ಫುಲ್ ಬ್ರೈಟ್ ಸ್ಕಾಲರ್ಶಿಪ್ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಪೋತು ಕಲ್ತದಿರು. ಅವಳು ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಮಧ್ವ ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತಂತೂ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ರಿಸರ್ಚ್ ಅಂತತ್ ಆ ಮಧ್ವ ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತಂತೂ ಮಹಾ ಮಲ್ಲೋ ಪುದರ್ಗೆತೊಂದ ಎಂಕಳು ಬನ್ನಂಜೆ ಗೋವಿಂದಾಚಾರ್, ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಕೆ.ಟಿ. ಪಾಂಡುರಂಗಿ, ಪ್ರಹ್ಲಾದಾಚಾರ್ ಅಂಚಿತ್ ನಾಲ್ಕು ಒಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಮಂತ ಕಲ್ತತ್ ಐಟ್ ಆಕ್ಳು PhD ಅಂತತ ಐತೆ ಸದ್ಯಂಟ ಕೇಸ್ ವೆಸ್ಟರ್ನ್ ರಿಸರ್ವ್ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಿಟಿ professor of religious studies with Case Western College of Sciences, professor of bioethics, teaching students who are pursuing their studies in medicine. So our department teach antantulleru. I thought must variety of interest undo in aita bagge itene mast time kitond patirpri ini enklega Vijaya Dashami I thought Vijaya Dashami Dani Madhwa Jayanthi putudno dina. So aita bagge enklega onji arda gante patirperu inchane dumbula nottu enklega patirthu philosophy interest ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ತೆರೆಯುವಂಪನ ಅವಕಾಶ ಸಿಕ್ಕುಣು ಅಂತ ಏನು ಎನ್ನುವೆ. Deepak ji, over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen now and begin a PowerPoint. Okay, so let's see if I can get that to work. There we go. And I should start the slideshow, play from start. Okay. So, namaste, everyone. It is a great honor to have been asked to speak today on the auspicious occasion of Shri Madhvacharya's birthday, which of course coincides with Vijaya Dashami, the 10th day of the victory of Dharma over Adharma. I hope that my talk contributes to this victory. Many thanks indeed to Shrivathsa Ballal, to the executive board, and to all of the members of the Shivalli Kutumba of North America for this invitation and opportunity. While I do enjoy giving talks to my colleagues in the academic world, there's nothing quite as wonderful as giving a talk to my own people, to Nanna Kutumba, to my family, to Namma Kutumba, to our family. And to have an introduction in Tulu I've never had that before. This is really amazing. Thank you. It's also amazing that this group has once again come together, though made much easier via the internet. I say again because in my hands here, and you can see it on the side in this video here, I hold the 1994 and I have the 2002 directory of the Kannada and Tulu-speaking Brahmins of this directory, compiled by Shri Professor Balakrishna Rao, who I believe is on this Zoom call, and my father, of course, Professor Raghupati Sharma. So this is how the 1994 one looks, okay, if you haven't seen it. I remember many road trips in the 1970s between Stony Brook, New York, and East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Many phone calls and many envelope stuffing events. Almost 45 years after the publication of these directories, we Shivallis, really you Shivallis, are able to use the internet to organize and come together as we are today, using Zoom to reach to people across the United States, across North America, and Canada as well, to so many homes. Much easier than stuffing envelopes, I'm sure you would agree. Mm-hmm. It is really quite amazing how many things have changed since then. So it's with great thanks that I'm able to give this talk in this context. In this connection, I must acknowledge my parampara, my lineage in India, and extend my thanks and gratitude to my teachers and guides, my gurus. This includes the late Shri Dhananjay Govindacharya, who is my first teacher in India. And as was mentioned, I studied with Professor 𝕍𝕚𝕣𝕒𝕥𝕚 in Reed College. And it was quite amazing that I found out that Professor 𝕍𝕚𝕣𝕒𝕚 studied with Dhananjay Govindacharya too. So it's a wonderful karma, Dhananjay Govindacharya. So I must thank him, and I must thank my teachers at the Purna Prajna Samshodhana Mandiram, namely Haridas Bhatt, who many of you I'm sure know, Hayavadana Puranika, and Vishnumurti Manjutaya, who also guided me when I was there. I was also fortunate to work with the late K.T. Pandurangi, who I'm sure many of you also know. But my work in India would not have been possible without the guidance and the grace of Professor D. Prahalad Acharya, who is now Shri Vidya Shrisha Tirtha Swamiji of the Vyasaraja Mutt. It's an unbelievable, I feel so lucky to have studied with such a man who is now a Swamiji of the Udupi Shri Krishna Matha system. It's amazing. Most of all, though, after thanking all of these great gurus, I wish to thank my parents, who we know are on the Zoom. After all, it's because of them that I was born a Shivalli Madhwa, after all, isn't it? So I owe all of my Shivalli background, of course, to my parents. So thank you very much, Mom and Dad. Mm-hmm. So today is Vijaya Dashami and Madhwa Jayanthi. In this connection, I would like to speak a little bit about both and a little bit about Madhvacharya's doctrines. Many of you might already know a great deal about both of these. I suspect you do. Some of you may know only very little. To this end, I hope to inform some, confirm for others, and to inspire everyone. So let me say a few words about Vijaya Dashami, okay? Everyone would certainly agree that Vijaya Dashami is the 10th day of the annual autumn celebration. It's connected with Navaratri and literally refers to the 10th day festival concerning celebrating the victory of Dharma over Adharma, good over evil. When asked about who won this victory, what was the battle about, there would be many different answers that were offered. It may be useful to consider one of the fundamental beliefs put forth by Sri Madhvacharya, namely that the universe was filled with bheda, difference, and that these differences are real and can be found everywhere. So it should be no surprise that there are many different ways that people celebrate Vijaya Dashami and Navaratri, the 9 nights leading up to it, each with many different meanings and different interpretations. The stories that we're told about the meaning and significance of Vijaya Dashami differ from region to region in India and even within regions. In North India, the festival and its culmination centers upon the Ramayana, the epic story of Lord Rama and his battle and final destruction of Ravana, which is celebrated with the burning of his effigy. In Eastern India, especially in Bengal, the focus is not Lord Rama, but rather the goddess Durga. Durga Puja commemorates the destruction of Mahisha Asura by the goddess Durga. Many other goddesses, in addition to Durga, are worshipped by Bengalis, including goddess Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and learning, who I'm sure many of you know and all of your children should worship. In our own South India, and especially in Mysuru, Vijaya Dashami is celebrated with reverence to both Durga and Rama. Of course, it has even more importance for Madhwas, who, as you know, believe that it is also a day to celebrate the birth of Sri Madhvacharya. In fact, his 783rd birth anniversary. But it is in Gujarat where we find something different and something unusual. And let me speak about that for a minute and you'll see why. Something unifying this process in Gujarat that has caught the eye of Indians, if not the world, and has propelled Vijaya Dashami into the same category as Diwali and Holi. It has thus become an essential part of the pan-Indian and even American religious landscape. In Gujarat and Western India, Vijaya Dashami also concerns the celebration of the victories of both Durga and Rama, but that aspect is not remarkable. That's not what draws me to Gujarat here. What is remarkable is that central to this celebration is the Garba and Dandiya dances. Dances meant for bhaktas, devotees, to express their devotion and to embody their bhakti, to manifest their devotion through motion. Until recent times, Garba was restricted to women and Dandiya to men. But this has since morphed, such that everyone gets to participate in and experience the divine in this way. Before I say more about the meaning of the dancing, I want to think with you about the dissemination of the celebration of Vijaya Dashami by means of this style of celebration. Today, we find Garba and Dandiya events all throughout India and all throughout the world. And most notably, given the location of this Kutumba, all throughout North America. In fact, in my college, in my university, last Saturday, there was celebration of Dandiya and Garba, and so many non-Indians and non-Hindus attended the event. So it's not restricted to temples and parties and to the homes of devotees, but we see it being celebrated in many, many new contexts. It is, or it has, like Diwali and Holi, assimilated into the American cultural and religious landscape. What does the dance mean for Gujaratis? Garba participants dance around, Pradakshina of course, images of Durga and other Devis and Devas. Participants believe that the circular dance is symbolic of the endless cycle of accumulating karma and getting reborn in samsara, birth and rebirth. That it's symbolic of the seasons, of the years, of the cosmos. Round and round the Atman go, caught in a seemingly endless cycle of so many lives, en route, hopefully, to moksha. The dancers are moving and are constantly changing. Only one entity remains constant, and that is the deity or the deities that are being danced around, who are found at the axis, at the very center of this cosmic wheel of birth and rebirth, of the earth revolving around the sun, the moon around the earth, and the endless cycles of the yugas of the universe. The divinity at the center is the only stable point in the constant change. And it is in this connection that I want to draw your attention to Shri Madhwacharya. Because indeed, for Shri Madhwacharya, the axis around which the entire universe and all its inhabitants revolved and is dependent on Lord Vishnu, the only independent entity in all of existence. So consider this parallel, that Garba, people are dancing around the center of the universe. The only stable place in the whole universe is that center. And for Madhwacharya, that center is Vishnu. The Madhwa school, of course, as many of you know, posits that the relationship between Brahman, between Vishnu and the individual Atman is Dvaita, dual. And moreover, that the Atman is utterly dependent on Brahman, not unlike the dancers in the Garba as they revolve around and around and around the center. Who then, you may ask, is Madhwacharya? What is propounded by the Madhwa school? Oh, this is an image of Vishnu, who we're all dancing around. According to the tradition, Madhwacharya was born 783 years ago of, not surprisingly, my dear friends, Shivalli Brahmin parents in the village of Pajakakshetra near modern-day Udupi in the Tulunadu area of southern Karnataka. His birth site, and I'm sure many of you here have gone to his birth site, is regarded as a tirtha by many Madhwa devotees. Unhappy with the prevailing interpretations of the Upanishads and other canonical texts offered by the existing schools of Vedanta, Madhwacharya offered his own explications, and these largely centered upon directing one's efforts towards showing proper devotion to Vishnu. This, by the way, is where Madhwacharya was born. Proper devotion to Vishnu, who he held is the God responsible for the very function and existence of the universe upon whom all is completely dependent. It is believed that Madhwacharya visited the monastic community in Bhadri, the home of Vyasa, the author of the Brahma Sutras, a text that offers the most authoritative encapsulation of the Upanishads, to meet the founder of the Vedanta tradition himself. Vyasa, as I'm sure all of you know, is believed to be an incarnation of Lord Vishnu himself. Under the guidance of Vyasa Vishnu, Madhwacharya is said to have composed his Brahma Sutra Bhashya, believed then to be the definitive commentary on the Brahma Sutras. As many of you know, many of the places mentioned in Madhvacharya's biography are regarded as Tulunadu Tirthas, and you probably have visited many of them, where he is believed to study the Vedas, where he had his library stolen, where he encountered a bhuta, which is a very specific sort of phenomena that we find in Udupi. Right? But none are as significant to the doctrines and practices of the Madhva tradition as is Udupi and the Udupi Sri Krishna temple, which we all know and love. So Madhvacharya, moreover, has a very, very unusual background as he proclaimed himself to be the third incarnation of Vayu, the wind god, who is also sort of the son of Vishnu. He is preceded by the first and second incarnations, namely Hanuman, the monkey deity and quintessential devotee in the Ramayana, and Bhima, who you all know is one of the Pandavas in the Mahabharata, who acts according to Krishna's commands. Vayu, namely Madhvacharya, is a guide for devotees on their journey toward Vishnu, and like his antecedents, has a dynamic position as a mediator between devotees and Vishnu. Madhvacharya's most informative autobiographical statement occurs at the end of his Brahmasutra Bhashya. He explains, and I'm quoting here, this is Brahmasutra Bhashya 4.423, in case anybody has a copy available. Vayu, he says, whose three forms are described in the Vedas, who has the great radiance of a god, who is bestowed upon us and in this way visible to us, whose first manifestation was as a messenger to Rama, whose second was as Bhima, the destroyer of the Kaurava army, and whose third incarnation is Madhva, by whom this bhashya is made for the sake of establishing the supremacy of Hari, that is Vishnu. What an unusual statement to place within his own book. Madhvacharya is very different, you could say, Veda. Madhvacharya is very, very different from all of the other scholars of Vedanta and certainly all of the other, founders of Vedanta for sure. No one has claimed this lineage and this authority. So this self-proclamation is very highly unusual in the history of Vedanta. Madhvacharya is unquestionably exceptional, and I might add, an unquestionable exception to the rule. So you may ask, what is the basic Madhva position? As is stated in the Vishnu Tattva Vinirnaya, quote, the wise recognize that the universe is known and protected by Vishnu. Therefore, it, namely the universe, is proclaimed to be real. But Hari alone is supreme. We have so many great concepts in this one passage. First, of course, is that Vishnu is supreme and that everyone is dependent on Vishnu. Second, and of tremendous importance, is that the universe is real. And this is in direct opposition to the position put forth by Shankaracharya, the Advaita school of Vedanta, where the universe is not quite as real as we think it is. And that in fact, all of what we see is merely Maya, illusion, such that the computer you're looking at, the desk your computer is on, none of those are really real. They're really just Maya, one could say. For Madhvacharya, everything is real. And this is, one could say, really rather different. So this passage, taken from Sri Madhvacharya's Vishnu Tattva Vinirnaya, summarizes the chief elements in Madhva Vedanta. For Madhvacharya, the universe is unquestionably real, as are its components. Vishnu, who is the pinnacle of the Madhva system, governs all things. Furthermore, correct knowledge of Vishnu and the nature and function of the universe is the prerequisite for moksha. You cannot get moksha according to Madhvacharya, if you do not think that the universe is real, and you do not think that Vishnu is at the absolute center of that universe, and that you are dependent utterly on Vishnu, you will not get moksha. So a bit more about Vishnu. Vishnu is the facilitator of all entities and all possible events. Some have concluded from this position that there is very little free will then in Madhva Vedanta. Everything is predestined. The words that are coming out of my mouth right now is because of the grace of Vishnu. And in fact, they are not entirely my words. It's because of Vishnu that they're being said. So you are all attending this Zoom, you think out of choice, but it's really because of Vishnu that you're attending this Zoom, because of your complete dependence upon Vishnu. The universe then, the entire universe, is manifested due to his activity and is utterly dependent upon him. To reflect this, Madhvacharya separates all of reality, everything, into swatantra, independent, and aswatantra, dependent entities. We are all, of course, dependent. The only independent entity is Vishnu. He is at the center of the cosmic Garbha dance for all sentient beings. All things, moreover, are in a hierarchical relationship with one another and with Vishnu, where Vishnu, of course, is at the zenith. This chain of command is known as Madhvacharya's doctrine of Taratamya, gradation. This hierarchy pervades every aspect of the Madhva system and can even be found in moksha. So moksha itself is graded according to a hierarchy, indexed both to your devotion and to your, well, to your destiny. So it is written in your very destiny, in your DNA, one could say, where you will be in moksha in relationship to Vishnu. Some are very close, some are further away. The metaphor that I always use with my students is I say it's a bit like being at a rock concert, right? Some people are in the front row and some people are very high up in the back. Everyone is enjoying the performance, right? But some people are closer up, right? That is Taratamya. So there is Taratamya in moksha because of the gradation in the devotion towards Vishnu. This Taratamya in moksha is known as Ananda Taratamya Vada, the theory of gradation in Ananda, in bliss. No other scholar of Vedanta has put forth such an idea, no one else. Madhvacharya is very different indeed. Madhvacharya's characterization of Vishnu is very similar to those offered by other Vaishnava traditions that existed in medieval Karnataka. Such descriptions rely primarily on accounts found in, of course, the Puranas, the Mahabharata, and the Ramayana, which are, of course, as you know, portrayals of Vishnu's avatars and Vishnu as depicted as a personal god. These accounts are intended to inspire the proper bhakti in devotees. And you remember that it's only with the proper and enlightened bhakti that a devotee can get moksha. Not surprisingly, Vishnu possesses attributes such as beauty, ananda, bliss, and intelligence. He is held to be all-pervading and to be one who devours everything. And we heard that very same language offered by Oppenheimer when he saw the first nuclear blast, right? Is that he referred to this kind of language about a god that can devour everything. It was so great. Quoting, of course, from the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu possesses all characteristics, such as being immanent in the universe and in the individual selves and the like. Lists of these and other attributes, as many of you know, can be found in Madhvacharya's Dvadasha Stotra, a text dedicated almost exclusively to propitiating Vishnu. Knowledge of Vishnu alone is insufficient for attaining moksha. Devotees must also obtain the grace of moksha in order to obtain moksha. So having simply knowledge of Vishnu does not give you moksha. You must have the grace, the blessing of Vishnu to achieve moksha. Madhvacharya writes, and this is in his Brahma Sutra Bhashya, direct realization of the highest Lord comes only from grace and not from the efforts of the jiva. The jiva, as I said, is utterly dependent upon Lord Vishnu, as is exemplified in the very need for Vishnu Prasada, the grace of Vishnu. The reward of Vishnu Prasada is a natural outcome of Bhakti Yoga, the path, of course, to moksha via devotion. When bhaktas show their awareness of the hierarchy of the universe, namely the supremacy of Lord Vishnu, and act accordingly, they are awarded for their submission. Madhvacharya explains, and again, this one is from the Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. Hari, that is Vishnu, is the master of all for all eternity. All are under the control of the highest one. This Taratamya and the supremacy of Hari are to be known. This should give you a broad sense of Madhvacharya's position. Whoops. Now I want to speak with you about Visheshas, which are the distinguishing properties. And I think the key component, other than Vishnu, in Madhva Vedanta. So the Visheshas, which I'm translating as distinguishing properties, is an integral part of the Madhva system. Without it, Madhva realism would be indefensible. Vishesha finds its roots in the Nyaya Vaisheshika tradition of philosophy. According to the Nyaya Vaisheshika, a Vishesha resides between an object and its attribute. So we have an object and an attribute. There's a Vishesha that stands between the two. The difference between these two atoms, one could say, lies in the Vishesha that resides in each of the two. There is no explanation, however, of the relationship between the Vishesha and the object that it is attached to. So if you imagine, I have a black jacket on, right? So there's blackness and there's jacket, and there's a Vishesha that lies between the blackness and the jacket. The Nyaya Vaisheshika school does not offer, though, a relationship between the Vishesha and the jacket. Are they identical or are they different? Since they cannot be identical, they must be different. But if they are different, then they require another Vishesha to distinguish the first Vishesha and the jacket. This position, or this theory of cognition, relies on a sort of atomic theory, one could say, is that cognition requires, quite literally, the cognition of the difference. So think of difference as having an atomic component. So when you see a difference between two pens, you're actually observing the Vishesha that resides between the two pens. But the question that follows from the Vishesha position is that if you have two Visheshas, what distinguishes one Vishesha from another? Is it a third Vishesha? Is it a fourth Vishesha? That is to say, the Vishesha V sub 1, we should call it, would require another Vishesha, V sub 2, we should call it, which would require yet another Vishesha, V sub 3. The end result is anavastha. Anavastha is an infinite regress, right? You have Visheshas all the way down. And that is a dosha, a flaw to be avoided at all costs. So this is the problem with the Nyaya Vaisheshika concept, and that leads Madhvacharya to posit his revised version of the Vishesha. So Madhvacharya's solution concerns the ability of the Vishesha to establish difference without necessitating another Vishesha. Given the logical problem of the Nyaya Vaisheshika concept, Vishesha must have this capacity, otherwise there will be an infinite regress, anavastha. And therefore, Madhvacharya explains that the Vishesha is swa-nirvahaka. It possesses a self-sufficiency and thereby doesn't require another Vishesha. This is from the Gita Tatparyam, Gita Tatparyam 11.9, in case anyone is looking. By positing this capacity, possessed by all substances, Madhvacharya is able to solve the problems of relating substances with their attributes, as well as relating entities that are different from one another. In light of Vishesha, it is possible for Vishnu then to be related to his attributes via Vishesha. In fact, all objects are related to their attributes by means of the Vishesha. This capability is intrinsic to all objects and is not itself an attribute. Many of you will be surprised by this sort of orientation of Madhvacharya. Madhvacharya was above all, indeed he was a bhakta, but he was also a philosopher. And his conversation partners were, of course, fellow Vedantins from the Advaita school and from the Vishishta Advaita school, but Sri Madhvacharya showed complete awareness and knowledge of all of the systems of Indian philosophy, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga. And so his concepts are always in relation to those other concepts and those dialogues that he was in. This is very, very philosophical materials, and it might come as a surprise to many of you who think of Sri Madhvacharya as propounding difference and as a bhakta. But a great deal of Madhvacharya's writings are these very, very philosophical materials that are very abstract, not unlike the math that I gave up. So I have often thought that doing Dvaita Vedanta studies like this is not so different from doing another kind of mathematics. One could say Madhva mathematics. Let me say a few words about Bheda Sadhana, establishing difference. So again, if this is very abstract for you, bear with me. This is one variety of Madhva studies. Madhvacharya believes that difference constitutes the swarupa, the essence of all objects. This is in distinction, of course, to Shankaracharya, who thinks that finally, any difference we perceive is a product of Maya. Difference is apprehended when the swarupa of any object is apprehended. An immediate awareness of the difference of an object is an awareness of its uniqueness. Madhvacharya explains that in general, the swarupa of an object distinguishes it from all other objects. If the swarupa were not constituted by difference, then the immediate comprehension of the general uniqueness of an object would not occur. If this basic understanding that this object is different than another object, if this understanding did not occur, then Madhvacharya jokes, it would be possible to doubt whether oneself was a pot. He says this in the Vishnu Tattva Vinirnaya. So Madhvacharya, and it should be surprising to you, he made a lot of jokes in his canon, mostly poking fun at people who followed Shankaracharya. So he said, if you buy into Shankaracharya's position and you don't think that things are different, how are you then going to distinguish yourself from a water pot? So the difference then is apprehended instantaneously when you see something. For these reasons, Madhvacharya claims that the universe is governed by Panchabheda, fivefold difference. This is also from the Vishnu Tattva Vinirnaya. The universe has 5 intrinsic differences. There's a difference between the Jiva and Lord Vishnu. There's a difference between Lord Vishnu and Jada, non-sentient material entities. You could translate Jada as material stuff. There's a difference between the individual Jivas, and there's a difference between Jivas and Jadas. There's also a difference between one Jada and another. The difference between these 5 is real. And this 5-fold difference is in direct opposition to Advaita Vedanta, where all of the differences finally are a product of Maya. These 5 differences are part of the very fabric of the Madhva universe. They are also, as I mentioned, fundamental bases for arguments regarding matters between the Madhva school and all of the other schools of Vedanta, most notably the Advaita school of Vedanta. Anyway, that's just a taste of some Madhva philosophy. So I'll end my brief thoughts here. I've touched upon the meaning and diversity of Vijaya Dashami, with special attention paid to how it is manifested in Gujarat. The meaning behind Garba, I think, links very, very nicely to Madhvacharya's idea about the supremacy and centrality of Vishnu. I then offered a brief biography of Madhvacharya, an overview of his basic philosophical position, and a detailed presentation of his theory of Bheda, difference. I hope that these thoughts informed some, confirmed for others, and inspired everyone. And I should say, I certainly hope that I made a difference, because Madhvacharya certainly made a difference. Thank you very, very much. So
Wow.
I should take it off of the share.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak ji.
Thank you.
You just left us spellbound with your deep and very, very engaging thoughts. I must say that I'm still processing the vastness of the information that you just shared with us. This is just amazing. This is what we were hoping, and you definitely took us to the doorsteps of such a vast field of Vedanta and Dvaita philosophy. Thanks again for coming and giving some of the best explanation of Taratamya and the correlation between Garba and how Navaratri is celebrated in Gujarat to the Madhwa philosophy. I would have never imagined the kind of analogy that you just gave us. It was a very, very useful and informative session. And I know that today we have the highest attendance of all the 10 days of celebration that we have had here. So that tells us that the entire Kutumba was eagerly waiting for this kind of a knowledge session. And I have already gotten some requests for Q&A, and knowing the limitation of time, I may come back to you asking for a dedicated Q&A session at some point in time that works for, because I myself have so many questions out of what you just took us through. I'm sure all the Kutumba members would be eagerly awaiting to get their questions answered. And there are so many young men and women, boys and girls, growing up in this country, just like how you did, who may be seeking answers to some of their, very, deep and philosophical questions. So it would be a great privilege for the entire Kutumba to have you once again come and talk to us.
Sure. Well, I should say that my talk was a very small drop in the ocean of Madhva Vedanta, a very small drop.
I will also say this, the some of the statements that you are making, kept me recalling, the experiences with Bananja Govindacharya, and the essence of your talk, that I could see in his pravachanas of Sangraha Bhagavata, that talks about everything that you just took us through. I could not miss him being recalled in this occasion.
That's very, very kind of you. Very, very kind of you. It was a real challenge to think of how to present things to such a large group with so many different levels of understanding of Madhva Vedanta. And I'm glad that that my discussion here, I think you found it useful, and I'm glad that others found it useful too. And I hope now that if you ever see Garba, you see Vishnu. Right? That would be nice, I think, right?
And to all Kutumba members, during introduction, I did not mention one more, important aspect of Dr. Deepak Sharma's work. He spoke at length about Visheshas, and one of his, scholarly work is focused on Visheshas, that we are all very, very proud of. Again, thank you, Deepak ji, for coming and, talking to us on this occasion.
Thank you. It's a great honor and a privilege. I am overwhelmed. Thank you very, very much. Thank
And
you.
I also thank your parents, Dr. Raghupathi Sharma, and your mother. I just exchanged texts with your father this morning, and I'm very happy to see both of them on this call.
Right. No, it's I can see that I have a few other relatives here, and I think Balakrishna uncle is also on the Zoom. He was very, very helpful in my early days studying Madhva Vedanta. I'm grateful to him. This is really a wonderful group. Really a wonderful group. Wow, I have so many relatives that are here. This is amazing.
Welcome to Kutumba, Deepak ji.
Thank you. Yes, I would welcome the opportunity to speak with the group again and to have Q&A. These are some of the topics are very controversial and very difficult. And I think it would be fun maybe at one time to read some simple, something from the Dasha Prakarana, some very simple Madhva text that's an argument against Advaita Vedanta. There's some fun arguments that he makes, and I would welcome the opportunity to do that. So I will always make time for my people.
Thank you. Sharan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. That was, as Shrivathsa ji said, it was very engaging. Especially the epistemology and the ontology aspects that you mentioned. I mean, I think those are pursuits of a lifetime for anybody, like you mentioned, and especially Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya. Thank you so much. Moving on, we have Shri Prashanta Kumar to speak, give us the ending notes here, and followed by the Shanthi Mantra.
Namaskara. Namaskara. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Deepak Sharma for a wonderful presentation on Madhwa philosophy. I'm very thankful and looking forward to have a Q&A session again. And we want you to come and talk more and more such talks in our future directions. And ಇತ್ತೆ ಅಂಚನೆ ಪಣ್ಣೆ ಅಂಚ ನವರಾತ್ರಿ ನಾವು ಇನ್ನು ಒಂಜೆ 2-3 ನಿಮಿಷ ಟೈಮ್ಗೆ ತೊಂಪೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಪಂಡ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಳನಿ ವರ್ಮ ದಿನ ಇನಿ 10ನೇ ದಿನ ನವರಾತ್ರಿ ಇನಿ ಆಚರಣೆ ಅಂತದು. ಸೊ ಇನಿ 10ನೇ ದಿನದ ಆಚರಣೆ. ಸೊ ನವರಾತ್ರಿ ಇನಿ ಒಂಜಿ ವಿಜಯದಶಮಿದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಪಂಡೇರು ಯಾವ್ದ ಪಂಡ ಒಂದು ವಿಜಯದಶಮಿದ ದಿನ ದೇವಿನ ಪೂಜೆ ಅಂತದ್ದು ಅವೇ ಅಧರ್ಮಂತ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಧರ್ಮ ಜಯ ಸಾಧಿಸೋತ ದಿನ ಪಂಟ ಒಂಜಿ ಪ್ರತೀತಿ. ಸೊ ಸುಮಾರ ಒಂದೆತ್ತು ಮಾಹಿತಿ ಒಂದು ಜಾಲಬಂಡ ಒಂಜಿ ಮಹಿಷಾಸುರನ ಸಂಹಾರಾತ್ನ ದಿನ, ರಾವಣನಿ ಕೆಟ್ಟನ ದಿನ ಇನಿ, ಪಾಂಡವರನ ಅಜ್ಞಾತವಾಸ ಅಂತ್ಯ ಆತ್ನ ದಿನ, ದಸರೆದ ಕೊನೆಯ ದಿನ ಬೆತ್ತ ದುರ್ಗಾದೇವಿ ಶುಂಭ ನಿಶುಂಭ ಚಂಡ ಮುಂಡ ರಕ್ತಬೀಜಾಸುರ ಮಹಿಷಾಸುರ ಸೇರುವಂತ ಮಂತ ರಾಕ್ಷಸನ ಸಂಹಾರ ಅಂತದ್ದು ದಿನ. ಅಂಚನೆ ಪ್ರತಿ ದೇವಾನುದೇವತೆಗಳು ವಿಜಯ ಬತ್ನ ದಿನ ವಿಜಯದಶಮಿ. ಒಂದು ರಾಜ ಮಹಾರಾಜರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಇದು ಒಂದು ಅದೃಷ್ಟದ ದಿನ. ಮುಖ್ಯವಾದ ಮಧ್ವಾಚಾರ್ಯರ ಜನ್ಮದಿನ. ಐಕೆ ನಾವು ಮಧ್ವ ಜಯಂತಿನಿ ಈ ದಿನ ಆಚರಿಸೋಪ್ಪ. ಅಂಚನೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ದಸರಾ ಇಸ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಪ್ರತೀತಿ. ಅದರಿಂದ ದಸರಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಏನಂತ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ ಆವಾಗ ದಸರಾ ಎಂಬ ಶಬ್ದ ದಶಂ ಹರಂ ಎಂಬ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತ ಶಬ್ದದಿಂದ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಅಂತೆ. ದಶ ಅಂದರೆ 10, ಹರ ಎಂದರೆ ನಿರ್ಮೂಲನೆ. ಹೀಗೆ ದಸರಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿರುವ 10 ವಿಧದ ದುರ್ಗುಣಗಳಾದ ಕಾಮ, ಕ್ರೋಧ, ಮೋಹ, ಲೋಭ, ಮದ, ಮತ್ಸರ, ಸ್ವಾರ್ಥ, ಅನ್ಯಾಯ, ಅಮಾನವೀಯತೆ ಮತ್ತು ಅಹಂಕಾರವನ್ನು ನಿರ್ಮೂಲನೆ ಮಾಡುವುದರ ಒಂದು ತತ್ವವೇ ದಸರಾ ಹಬ್ಬದ ಹಿಂದಿರುವ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರತೀತಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಇದೇ ನಾವು ಮೊನ್ನೆಯಿಂದ ನವರಾತ್ರಿ ಮೊದಲನೇ ದಿನದಿಂದ ಇವತ್ತಿನವರೆಗೆ ನಾವು ಇಷ್ಟು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಧಾರ್ಮಿಕ ಕಮಿಟಿಯ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ನಡೆಸಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಈಗ ನನಗೆ ಒಂದು ಭಗವದ್ಗೀತೆಯ ಒಂದು ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ 5 ಒಂದು ಶ್ಲೋಕ ನೆನಪಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಂದ್ರೆ, ಶ್ರವಣಂ ಕೀರ್ತನಂ ವಿಷ್ಣು ಸ್ಮರಣಂ ಪಾದಸೇವನಂ ಅರ್ಚನಂ ವಂದನಂ ದಾಸ್ಯಂ ಸಖ್ಯಂ ಆತ್ಮನಿವೇದನಂ. ಇದು ಏನಂದ್ರೆ, ಒಂದು ವಿಷ್ಣುವಿನ ಶರಣಾಗತಿ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ವಿಷ್ಣುವಿನ 9 ರೂಪದ ಭಕ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ಹೊಂದಿರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಒಂದು ಮೆನ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಈಗ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಯಾಕೆ ಇದನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾವು ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಮೊನ್ನೆಯಿಂದ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ನಾವು ತುಂಬಾ ಇದನ್ನು ತುಂಬಾ ವಿಷಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ತಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿದ್ವಿ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ವಿಷ್ಣು ಸಹಸ್ರನಾಮ ಆಗ್ಲಿ, ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಶೋಭನ್ ಆಗ್ಲಿ, ಭಜನೆ ಆಗ್ಲಿ, ಅಥವಾ ಹರಿಕೀರ್ತನೆ ಆಗ್ಲಿ, ಹೀಗೆ ಲಲಿತಾ ಸಹಸ್ರನಾಮ ಆಗ್ಲಿ, ಅಥವಾ ದುರ್ಗಾಷ್ಟಮಿ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಹತ್ವ ಆಗ್ಲಿ, ಹೀಗೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ಅನ್ನು ಎವ್ರಿ ಡೇ ನಾವು ಟಚ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಆವಾಗ ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲರನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಮೆಸೇಜ್ ಕಳಿಸಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ವಾಟ್ಸಪ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಕಳಿಸಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಬನ್ನಿ ಅಂತ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಈ 9 ವಿಧದ ಭಕ್ತಿ ಈ ಶ್ಲೋಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಶ್ರವಣಂ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ದ ನೇಮ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಗ್ಲೋರೀಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ವರ್ಡ್ ಲಾರ್ಡ್, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇದರಿಂದಾಗಿ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಖಾಲಿ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಗೆ ದೇವರನ್ನು ಮುಟ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ತದಂತೆ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ ಮಹಾರಾಜ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಿತ. ಹಾಗೆ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಕೀರ್ತನೆ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ದೇವರನ್ನು ಒಲಿಸಬಹುದು ಅಂತೇಳಿ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾರದ ಮುನಿಗಳು ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಕನಕದಾಸನಿಗೆ ಒಲಿದ ಶ್ರೀಕೃಷ್ಣ ಅಲ್ವಾ, ಅದು ಒಂದು ಹೇಳ್ಬಹುದು. ಅಥವಾ ಮುಂದೆ ಸ್ಮರಣಂ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ದೇವರನ್ನು ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ನೆನಪಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದು, ಪ್ರಹ್ಲಾದನ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಪಾದ ಸೇವನಂ, ಇದು ಮಹಾಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಿ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ ಕೊಡ್ಬೋದು. ಅರ್ಚನೆ ಮಾಡುದು, ವರ್ಷಿಪಿಂಗ್ ದ ಲಾರ್ಡ್, ನಮ್ಮ ಮಹಾರಾಜ ಪೃಥುವ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ. ವಂದನಂ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆಫರಿಂಗ್ ದ ಲಾರ್ಡ್. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಕ್ರೂರ ರಥದಲ್ಲಿ ಕುತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳುವಾಗ ಕೃಷ್ಣನ ಅವನು ವಂದನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಂತೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ದಾಸ್ಯಂ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟಿಂಗ್ ದ ಆರ್ಡರ್, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ದೇವರು ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನು ಮಾಡುದು. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಉತ್ತಮ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ ಹನುಮಂತ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಸಖ್ಯಂ ದೇವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಶಿಪ್ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡೋದು. ಉತ್ತಮ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಹಾಭಾರತದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೆ, ಅರ್ಜುನ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಆತ್ಮ ನಿವೇದನಂ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಟೋಟಲ್ ಸರೆಂಡರಿಂಗ್ ಟು ದ ಗಾಡ್, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಉದಾಹರಣೆ ಬಲಿ ಮಹಾರಾಜ. ಹೀಗೆ ನಾವು ಈ 10 ದಿನಗಳ ಕಾರ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಏನಾದರೂ ಈ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಇದನ್ನು ಶ್ರವಣೆ, ಕೀರ್ತನೆ ಅಥವಾ ಆಗ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಬೊಬ್ಬರು ಒಂದೊಂದು ವಿಧದಿಂದ ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಕುಟುಂಬದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸದಸ್ಯರಿಗೂ ಮಹಾಕಾಳಿ, ಮಹಾಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಿ, ಸರಸ್ವತಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ನವದುರ್ಗೆಯರು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದನ್ನು ಮಾಡಲಿ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಈ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇಡಿಕೊಳ್ತೇನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಸಹಕರಿಸಿದ ಕುಟುಂಬದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಜನರಿಗೂ ಇನ್ನೂ ಕೂಡ ಇಂತಹ ಉತ್ತಮ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ನಡೆಸುವಂತಾಗ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ದೇವರ ಹತ್ರ ಬೇಡಿಕೊಳ್ತಾ, ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಶರ್ಮಾ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಅಭಿನಂದನೆಯನ್ನು ಸಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಧಾರ್ಮಿಕ ಕಮಿಟಿಯಿಂದ ಧಾರ್ಮಿಕ ಕಮಿಟಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸದಸ್ಯರು, ನಮ್ಮ ಶುಭಕ್ಕಾಗ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಶರಣ್, ಸಂಜಯ್, ಇವರೆಲ್ಲ ಮೊನ್ನೆಯಿಂದ ತುಂಬಾ ಇದು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ನಡೆಸ್ತಾ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಅನಂತ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ನಮ್ಮ what we did is from day 1 to day 9, every day we read about the importance of each day, and that too by the kids. So I am very thankful to each of the kids for coming to this meeting and talking about the day's importance, and that the script is written by our Shrivathsa. I am again thanks to Shrivathsa also, and all the committee members, all the executive committee members, and our board of directors, everybody for encouraging us to do this program. So again, once again, ellarigu namaskara. Back to Sharan.
ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು ಪ್ರಶಾಂತ್ ಅವರೇ. ಪ್ರಶಾಂತ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದಾಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಇಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಬಂದು ಇಷ್ಟು ಲೈಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನಡೆಸಿಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಿ. ಎಲ್ಲ ಹಿರಿಯರಿಗೂ ನಮಗೆ ದಾರಿ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು. ಈಗ ಶಾಂತಿ ಮಂತ್ರ ಹೇಳಿ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಮುಗಿಸೋಣ. ಓಂ ಸಹನಾ ಭವತು ಸಹನೌ ಭುನಕ್ತು सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। हरि ओम्।